Hi, friends, and a very pleasant good day, and welcome to another edition of 15241 Today Talk. Glenn Ward is our producer-director. Linda Dunzinski is our coordinating producer. And Jim Render and I are most honored to have Mark Gentile, the president of Trumbull Corporation, join us today. Thank you for doing that, Mark, and for being with us today. You know, Mark, I'm not surprised by this, but I'm somewhat extremely pleased when I have had the opportunity to interview those individuals that have come through the Upper St. Clair School District and through the football program. So many of them have been successful because of being part of Upper St. Clair and being a part of the football program. You're a great example of that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I think whenever when you're a young kid and you're playing football, especially playing for Coach Render, and he's a bit demanding, and I think one of the things that you learn doing that is if you prepare and you put your time in and you stay at it and you just basically grind it out, you'll win. You'll do well. There'll be success. I always think back to it was right before the state championship game when I was a junior, and we were practicing, and he looked at us in the huddle and said, "I just want everybody to know if we keep practicing like we're practicing." I thought he was going to say we're going to get killed, but he said, "We'll win." So that was kind of I remember that to this day, just thinking like, okay, if you just put your mind to it and you do what you're supposed to do, chances are you'll be successful. So it's kind of something to kind of carry with you the rest of your life.
Did he ever yell at you?
Did you say not yell at me? No. Just a couple times here and there.
Coach, talk about Mark as a person and as a football player back when you first came across him.
Well, first of all, as a football player, one of our former guests, Jerry Bertiotti, was the quarterback in 1988 when we won that first WPIL championship. So in 1989, we had a lot of returning starters, except at the quarterback position. So we had a little battle. Mark was one of them in the battle with a couple seniors. So as I recall, he didn't even get too many reps at the final scrimmage. But somewhere after the final scrimmage, it dawned on me that here's this big guy that could throw the ball deep, and by doing so, it would keep the defense honest and back so that another former guest, Doug Whaley, and Pete Habib could run the ball. So I told the coaches, Mark's going to be our starting quarterback, and that worked out pretty well. We were 15-0 his junior year, and he was the starting quarterback, and everything worked out well. His job was to manage and throw that ball deep when we needed to. So that, like I said, you know how there was always critics up along the fence up there. And I've been told, they said I picked the wrong quarterback. Well, 15-0 isn't too shabby as a starting quarterback. So now you mentioned about him as a person. Quality individual, very intelligent, and, he was well educated at Upper St. Clair. And I'll skip ahead a little bit. Then he went to Bucknell and got a great degree up there. And I think the Trumbull P.J. Dick is the only job you've had.
Yeah, I've worked there for 25 years.
So, and that's a Upper St. Clair-based family-owned business. And it's worked out well.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what are being a quarterback of a successful high school football team and running being president of a major corporation like Trumbull? Are they more similar or dissimilar?
I'd say it's similar. Like Coach said, you're asked to manage, and that's to manage the game, and that's sort of what you have to do when you're in the position that I'm in now. And when I was, because I've traveled all around, I would run construction projects. That's what I would do for the first 18 years that I worked there. And when you're running a big construction job, you obviously, if you're a project manager, you're managing the job. And one thing you can't do, because you have to realize that everybody that's working for you they know more about what they're doing than you do, okay? And if you think you're going to go around and tell everybody what to do all the time, it's not going to work, because that guy who you're telling what to do, he knows a little bit more, probably a lot more about what his individual task is than you. So what I found is that if you know about 80% of it, but you ask a bunch of questions, if you pretend like you only know about half of what's going on and ask a bunch of questions that you already know the answers to, people will open up to you and they'll fill the rest in for you. And then you'll kind of get your way of where you think things ought to move. And the people who are working for you will think it's their idea. Okay. So, playing quarterback's a lot like that. If there's always the glory stories of the Bobby Lanes of the world who yelled at everybody and told everybody what to do. But, when you're playing quarterback, you have to lead by example. And, you have to show everybody that you're willing to work just as hard as they do. And you also have to just bring everybody along. And, you can't just dictate to everybody and scream at everybody and yell at everybody. You just have to, treat everybody fairly and, bring everybody together as a team in order to get the job done. So,
tell everyone about the mission statement of Trumbull Corporation and what it is that you do in your projects.
Well, there's two parts of the company. PJ Dick is a commercial building, which they're doing the renovations at Upper St. Clair High School right now. They built Console Energy Center, the new PNC Tower downtown. They build hotels, schools, a lot of university stuff. But I work for Trumbull Corporation, which is the heavy highway part of the company. So we do roads, bridges, dams. I've been all over, several states. I've moved 11 times. The Woodrow Wilson Bridge in Washington, D.C., I was on that job. I've been to State College, built highways in State College. We did the tunnel for the subway underneath the river downtown. But it's a family-owned company. It's owned by families, the Hecks and the Rouse, who are Upper St. Clair residents. And it's big enough that you can work on the big type of jobs that people in the industry like to work on. You like to, one day say, hey, I built this or I built that. But it's small enough that it still has a family atmosphere. And because it is family owned, it's not a publicly traded company. So I always tell people that, to use a football analogy, that we're more like the late 60s Packers under Vince Lombardi than we are the Steelers recently here, where you have the Antonio Browns running around yelling and screaming about me, 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 me. We more have a team attitude there, where people have their own personal agendas of their success, where they want to be in their career, but they also understand that the best way to achieve those is by moving the company forward. And we're lucky we don't have a lot of turnover. We don't have a lot of me people, and the company's been very successful because of that. And then the ownership is, they're fantastic. Just recently here during the coronavirus, when the state shut all our jobs down, we were down for quite a while. And if you're not working, you're not making money, right? And so we didn't have that revenue coming in, and the ownership said, we're not laying anybody off. And they didn't lay even the hourly people off. They kept them and paid them 40 hours a week. And that makes a big difference to people. That when you treat people like that, because an attitude shift in those people can cost you a lot of money. So And now that we're back up and we're working and we're going well, we're doing very well this year because, those people appreciate that. They appreciate when they got their 40-hour paycheck when they were at home and they weren't doing anything and the company wasn't making any revenue in order to offset those costs. So that's the type of place it is. It's you couldn't ask for a better place to work. Just between the people and the people who own it, it's one of a kind.
Jim?
Tell me what it was like when you went out as a construction site manager. How old were you the first time you did that?
The first job I was ever on was Interstate 322, which is just south of State College. It goes from Milroy. They called it the Penn State Football Highway. And my first manager, I was a project engineer, and his name was Jack Moshe, and he was a little older guy, and he'd come up through the ranks, and he said, "You're at work at 6:30. That's it." And at 6:31, he'd be standing out on the little patio outside the trailer like this. If you got to work at 6:31, and he'd go, "You're never going to make it. Probably get rid of you by the end of the week." And you got to work at 6:30 and you didn't leave till 6:30, and that was that. And but it's interesting because you're out there and you're out there trying to instruct people what to do and to manage people, but there's a lot of people out there who have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. And it's the blue collar people who've been out there doing that. So you learn real fast that you don't walk around and talk about that you have this fancy college degree. You learn how to treat people well, because if they don't want to work for you, they won't work for you. So I was on a couple jobs like that, and then as an underling, and then I moved up to project manager, and that's where I kind of figured out how to manage a little bit better, how to treat people to get the most out of them. And it's not being a dictator. It's not running around thinking you know everything. It's kind of asking a lot of questions and getting information out of people in order to move things along.
Do you stand out there at 6:30 pointing to your watch?
No, I don't do that. No, I don't.
Hey, I want to go back to football for a minute in high
Okay.
school. Tell me a fond memory of your junior year on that 15-0 state championship team.
There was several. I would say the play that is really that stands out, that it was the most memorable play, was when we were playing North Allegheny. That was probably our toughest game all year, besides the state championship game. It was 14-14 tie. We got the ball back. We drove to about midfield, and we had two runs that didn't go anywhere. So it was third down and 11. And at halftime, Coach Reynolds had brought us together as the offense and said, if we put somebody in motion, if we put it back in motion out of the backfield off to the right, and he said the safety will go with the back. So we're going to drop this. He said, here's the play. He made up just called it a new play and said that's we're going to save it for the right time of the game. So with a minute and a half left, I think Mike Quealy came into the huddle and said, the play that we drew up at halftime, I forget what it's called, but just run that play. So I said, all right. So I was supposed to wait till Doug Whaley went all the way in motion, almost to the sideline. So I was delaying my cadence as he went in motion, so to make sure that he drew that safety over as far as possible. And he was probably about 5 feet from the sideline. He was kind of like taking little baby steps so he didn't go out of bounds. Said hut, and Phil Dunn just ran right past the linebacker, just lobbed it over the linebacker's head. He caught and ran in for a score. So all on a play that we drew up at halftime. So that was probably my fondest memory. And then, of course, when we won the state championship and playing on national TV, when we played North Hills on national TV. Yes, it was one of the first ESPN games of the week that was on back then. So
It was actually called Sports Channel America.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, they've changed names. That's now AT&T Sports or
Okay.
whatever the Pirates and the Penguins are on. That was the birth channel when we, he's right. There were a lot of fond memories. I think that play to the pass to Phil Dunn, I think it was called belly look-in, which
Yes.
we had, I mean, Phil Reynolds, you're exactly right, drew up the adjustments. But it wasn't like we totally drew it up in the dirt.
That sounds better today, though.
It does. You're exactly
I
right.
shouldn't have ruined his story.
No, I think it exactly does. So back in the late 80s, early 90s, are you calling all your own plays, or are they shuffling them in with a wideout?
You're shuffling them in with wideouts. No.
But did you have did coach say to you you could change the play at the line?
We had some audibles that we could call. You called that in the cadence. You could split some things here and there. If you saw packed in, you could split the backfield and run, toss right, or you could, if you saw a certain defense, you could, run a pass play. I tried to do that so I could actually throw the ball every once in a while. But no, he called all the plays. We had a good offense. It was a pro style offense that, which is nice. We were in the same offense in college, so I knew that. When I knew the offense by the time when I got to college.
Well, let's move into the fact that you went to Bucknell, and they actually moved you to tight end.
Right. Yeah.
So talk about that.
I went there as a freshman, and all full of spit and vinegar to play college football. And 3 games into the season, one of the guys who'd been recruited with me as a quarterback got to start on the varsity. And I was competing against 2 other guys. They were in my grade, and they had come from like a run and shoot offense in high school, so they were used to throwing the ball all the time. And I wasn't up to that speed yet. And I in my mind, I thought, given a year or 2 to develop, I would be better than them. And the one guy started a game or 2, and then the other guy in my grade started the rest of the season and did really, really well. So I was stuck on scout team my freshman year, and I started playing wide receiver on scout team. And so they had asked me at the end of the year, would you be interested in playing wide receiver next year or something? And I said, yeah, sure. So I got back to camp as a sophomore, and I was a 4th-string quarterback. And I said, I always had this dream of playing college football, and I wanted to play. I wasn't going to quit. So I went after 2 practices of camp. I said, I went to the coach. I said, all right, I want to switch. And he said, so I went to the wide receivers meeting, and I was all excited. And he came in and tapped me on the shoulder and said, the tight end meeting. You go play tight end. I'd spent my whole life warming up on one knee, I never hit the sled. So the first practice I go out there, and we have to push the 7-man sled completely across the field. That was the warm-up. So I'd been used to doing, like practicing the option pitch and stuff to warm up. I'd never hit the sled. And so we had to push it all the way across the field. And now when you're playing tight end, you're on the end of the sled, right? So we had pushed it about 25 of the 52 yards that go across from sideline to sideline. Now it's my turn. I get up there and I hit the sled, and since I don't know what I'm doing, the sleds, and I'm on the end, the sled starts to rotate now around me because I'm not moving it at all. I'm grinding my feet, I'm doing wrong, and it just starts going like this. Now it's going the wrong way. Well, the offensive line coach, he was just waiting. He knew what was going to happen, and I could see the veins in the side of his neck as he just went ballistic. He called me every name under the sun and just said, "You make me sick. Get out of here. I don't want to ever see you again." He was mad, but I hung in there, and I put on, I lifted, put on weight. I ended up playing a lot my sophomore year, and then I started my junior and senior year at tight end. Got a bunch of passes. I probably put on about 40 pounds. I went from about 195 to 235. So had a lot of fun, played all 4 years, got a good education. Got to play in the classic stadiums around America, Harvard, Dartmouth, There's places like that, Fordham, you know.
The Yale Bowl?
We never played at Yale. No, we never played at Yale. But Bucknell's in the Patriot League, so you played Lehigh, Lafayette, you know, Holy Cross. You know, so it's a good place to go because it's not. They let you major in stuff like, you know, you have time to major in stuff like engineering. I mean, there's guys who I played college football with who are doctors now. You know, they're in finance or something like that because there's very strict limits on how long you're allowed to practice every day and what you're allowed to do because they take academics seriously. So, you know, 99% of the athletes at Bucknell graduate in 4 years. So, the heavy emphasis on academics, which is good. So,
Well, that must be. Well, let me ask you, how challenging was it to be part of a prestigious academic university like Bucknell and still be part of a successful program and have a chance to play?
it's extremely challenging to try to, you know, when you're done at practice and, you know, you still have to get, you know, you always have some sort of ding or bruise or something you got to get looked at after, you know, you have an ice pack on and whatever, and then you go eat. By the time you're done, it's 7:00. And then, you know, everybody else is at a school like that. Everybody else has already been in the library since 5 studying. So you're getting up there at maybe 7:30, 7:45. So you just learn to go with no sleep. You learn to stay up and, you know, stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning, and then get up and go to class. And it's just, after a while, it just becomes routine. But I struggled at first. I really, really did. I struggled with with that sort of discipline that you needed to do that. But, you know, eventually you figure out you're either going to do it or you're going to be shown the door. So, you know, you figure out what to do and you get it done, and then, you know, it carries over into what you do the rest of your life. You know, it's good for when you have kids, and then you don't get any sleep when you have kids. So, I thought it was a great experience. I'm trying to push my older daughter that way, trying to get her maybe to consider going someplace like there.
I want to ask you about your family in a moment, but let me ask you about your mom and dad. What were the strong principles that they taught you that have been important in your life?
Well, you know, my dad's parents were straight off the boat from Italy. They didn't speak much English at all. He grew up in Homestead, and I think my nunny had an 8th grade education, and my dad said he can never remember a time which she didn't say, "You're going to be a doctor." So you have somebody who barely speaks any English with an 8th grade education, who knows what it takes to be a doctor somehow, I don't know how, and insisted that he was going to be a doctor, and that was it. And my dad played baseball in college, and he got some looks from some pro teams, and he said he came home and he said to my nunny, "There's like this pro day that I could go to or whatever," and she said, that's nice, but you're not playing pro baseball. You're going to go to Pitt Medical School and you're going to be a doctor, and that's the end of it. And I don't ever want to hear anything else about baseball ever again. So, you know, she was about 4'11", and so she was an extremely hard worker, and my dad is an extremely hard worker. So I learned that from him. And then my mom was the first, not woman, but first person in her family to go to college. She grew up in West Mifflin, and the way she met my dad was my mom's high school math teacher is my uncle. So, you know, my dad's family is basically a family of immigrants who has a doctor, a priest, and a teacher in the family. So she made sure that they all went to college and they all got educated. And you know, my mom was a school teacher. And so just the value of education, the value of working hard. You know, my dad, I can remember when I was in college and coming home, like after being out with my friends and having a good time, and maybe, you know, a little bit too good of a time, and coming home and like sitting at, you know, 2:30 in the morning, sitting at the kitchen table eating or whatever, and the phone would ring, and it was my dad being called to the hospital for an emergency. Him coming down the stairs with his white lab coat on, and he would just look at me and go, and get in his car. It's 2:33 in the morning, and he'd go to work, you know. So when you have a job like that, you don't do that's your life. That's what you do. And that always impressed me, that he would work that hard and be able to wake up in the middle of the night and go to the emergency room and perform a surgery on somebody. I always thought that was extremely impressive. Just to, you don't have a day off ever. You don't have a day off, and that's what my mom said about him when he first started his practice. He went 3 years just working by himself, and he never had a day off in 3 years, ever, because he was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 straight years until he took on some help. So,
how'd you meet your wife, Vicky?
I actually met her at. I was working out of town at the time in Columbus, and I came home, and for the weekend, I was out with my friend Lou Petrogallo, who I've known since 5th grade, and we went out to a place in the Strip District called Roland's, and I was standing there, and her friend kind of lost her balance and bumped into my wife, and my wife bumped into me, and I turned around and I just started talking to her, and 2 years later we were married. So she graduated from North Allegheny, which in our house we call it, since we're in Pine Richland, we call it the Evil Empire. And she said it wasn't as bad when she went to school there, which I find hard to believe. But all joking aside, she's from the North Hills, so we live up there now.
And tell us about your 2 daughters.
I have my oldest daughter's Caroline. She was born in Virginia when we lived in Virginia, and she's now a sophomore at Pine Richland. She plays lacrosse and field hockey. So she'll be going to college in 2 years, which I can't believe. She'll be driving next year, which I can't believe. And then my younger daughter's Kate, who's she's in 7th grade. She's 13, and she plays basketball and lacrosse.
Jim, we've got a couple minutes left. Any other areas you want to investigate?
Your daughter, the younger one, I know, is a pretty good basketball player for her age group.
Yeah, she's getting there. She's getting there. She's a long way to go, but she's tall. She's 6 foot as a 13-year-old. So, but I think she got my mother-in-law's coordination. I remember when I was first dating my wife, we.
Wait a minute. You said she has your mother-in-law's coordination?
Yeah, when I was first dating my wife, I was screwing around in the backyard at my in-law's house, and there was a football there, and I was throwing it around. My mother-in-law picked it up and threw it. She threw a nice tight spiral. I said,
so you're saying this is a positive that
yes, it was a positive. It was a positive. So.
I thought, I almost took that the wrong way.
No, but I think my mother-in-law always said she wanted to play basketball, always wanted it, but it just wasn't available when she was growing up.
Let me ask you, go back to P.J. Dick and Trumbull. When you would, today, if you would drive over the Woodrow Wilson Bridge in D.C., what's your thought process? What's your feelings?
I spent 4 years on that job, right? We moved down there. We lived there for 4 years. So you just think about all the, you see parts of the barrier on the side, and you think about everything that went into getting that designed and getting it, the engineering figured out in order to build it.
It's a beautiful bridge, Lanny. I can only imagine or wonder what it's like to be the project engineer.
Take the subway from downtown over to the North Shore. I was on that job. So, when my kids and I will go on the subway, I'll say to them little things like, the river's right up there, and I don't think we tightened some of these bolts all that well. So you got to watch if that water starts coming in. They've had enough of me with that sort of thing, though. So they give me, oh, Dad, stop.
You ever bore your children with your stories about your success as a football player?
This morning, I was doing it this morning, but right before I left here. So yeah, probably every day I bore them. They roll their eyes now when I do it. But I try to. I don't try to tell glory stories. I try, if they have problems or issues with what they're trying to do, I try to give them some parallels and say, just tough it out. Everything will be okay. If you just keep showing up, that's 90% of the battle right there. Just keep showing up.
Pretty good guest today, don't you think?
Outstanding guest today, Mark Gentile. Thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations to you for the successes that you've enjoyed and president of Trumbull Corporation and the wonderful family that you have. Best wishes to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
And thank you for joining us for 15241 Today Talk. And thanks also for watching our programs. We appreciate it.